Well, there they have. And what did Israel do? They're pummeling Gaza again in an effort to deliberately ruin any kind of ceasefire negotiations that may take place between Hamas and the United States of America. They are basically cutting out the middlemen and going directly to the United States of America.
Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. I know you've called this move a flight.
It's so funny that the Democrats are like, remember when I was like, Democrats don't have any discernible policies that you can point to. Okay. They're like a rudderless ship. Remember when I said that? And then the Democrats were like, bet we do have a policy. It's called defending the least popular country on the fucking planet, the beautiful nation state of Israel. Okay. They were like, oh, you think we don't have policies? Guess what? I'll show you. We do have a policy. It's whatever Israel is upset about in that moment.
Flying grift, your words, a flying grift, and have noted that the regime's ties to terrorist organizations like President Trump himself has called Qatar a, quote, funder of terrorism. So what do you think is really behind this move?
It is influence peddling at its most outrageous and egregious. I mean, Donald Trump's $400 million presidential palace in the sky represents the largest gift that's ever been conferred on any president by any foreign government in the history of the United States. And it's outrageous and unacceptable. And just as troubling as the gift itself is the source of the gift, Qatar. As you noted, Qatar is a state sponsor of terrorism. It has a long and ugly history of financing a barbaric terrorist organization, which has on its hands the blood of Americans. And it's a cruel irony that both Air Force One and are going to have something.
Dude, it's crazy. It's the most egregious form of bribery in that it's not being done on behalf of Israel. No, exactly. No, they're like, how dare. First of all, what the f do you think Saudi Arabia has been doing? The reason why they don't chirp about Saudi Arabia doing this, or the UAE doing this, or Israel doing this, countries are all literally just unconditionally and permanently pro-Israel and don't give a f about Palestinians, whereas Qatar, at the very least, is neutral. That's it. Their crime is neutrality. Dog, people in your district are starving. Yeah, this is the Richie Torres meme. Come here, dude. Okay, to be fair, the last American who shat all over Saudi Arabia met his end by way of a bone saw. That's also true. Saudi Arabia doesn't give a fuck about Palestinians. Saudi Arabians do. The royal family, maybe some in the royal family do. Have you ever heard MBS talk about Palestinians? He sees them as a nuisance. He just wants a direct flight from Tel Aviv to Riyadh. And the Palestinian population is in the way of accomplishing that goal. That's it. That's it. All of this chirping about Qatar, despite the fact that it is transparent bribery, okay? All this chirping about Qatar, two things should be true at the same time, is because Qatar is neutral on Palestine, as opposed to being directly antagonistic. Yeah. Contacted the former leader of the Arab Americans for Trump to start the talks that got Alexander released. Curious to see what the Republicans who think random college students were in contact with will say about this. The back channel talks that led to the release of Eden Alexander began with a message from official to Bashar Ababa, former leader of the Arab Americans for Trump. 2 Israeli officials, 1 Palestinian official, and 1 U.S. official tell Axios. The reason why they're frustrated is not even because of the very obvious bribe. Okay? The reason why they're frustrated is because Qatar is now playing a formative role in cutting out Israel from the story because Israel itself doesn't want to play a role in the negotiation. The whole story is worth reading. Israel found out through Mossad. Breaking. Israel targets heads of military wing Mohammed Sinwar in an airstrike on a bunker underneath the hospital in Gaza, 3 sources told me. Results of the strike are still unclear. The timing of this is just before Trump, Wickoff, and the Israeli negotiators they made Netanyahu send will be in Doha. Seems aimed at making sure no progress is made during this window on further exchange and ceasefire deals. Yeah, bunker underneath the hospital again. Israel does want to play a role. They just want that role to be sabotaging any progress whatsoever. No, I know. That's why they're pummeling. They're pummeling Gaza extra hard. Yeah, Israel found out about the secret talks about Alexander, an IDF soldier, not from the White House, but from its own intelligence services, Israeli officials say. Israel normalization takes backseat as Trump announces Saudi deals. Approach pro-Trump activists for secret talks that freed Eden Alexander. Also seeking a way to convince President Trump to put more pressure on Israel, and Trump's team was intent on freeing the last living American held in Gaza. Baba, a Palestinian-American businessman who helped Trump make inroads with Arab voters in 2024, became the unlikely intermediary. An official outside of Gaza reached out to Baba in late April in hopes of striking up a dialogue with Trump envoy Steve Witkoff. It took time for that back channel to materialize, but it gained momentum last week, a senior Israeli official tells Axios. Around 20 messages were passed between the sides in calls and texts to Baba over the past 2 weeks. He also spoke to chief negotiator Khalil al-Hayya. According to a source familiar, Baba declined the comment. Witkoff, with help from Qatari officials and Baba, ultimately convinced the militant group that releasing Alexander for free would carry a lot of weight with Trump. Around 10 p.m. Doha time on Sunday, formally agreed to release Alexander. Then Witkoff called Alexander's parents to tell them the news that they waited 483 days to hear. Israel found out about the secret talks about Alexander, an IDF soldier, not from the White House, but from its own intelligence services, two Israeli officials tell Axios. When Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's right-hand man, Ron Dermer, was in Washington last Thursday, his American counterparts didn't mention the back channel. Dermer had to raise it himself with Witkoff, an Israeli official said. Witkoff confirmed to Dermer that talks were taking place, but made clear Israel wouldn't have to give anything in return for Alexander's release, and that hadn't said yes yet. How insane that Mossad is spying on Americans. And Ron Dermer is operating on that intelligence that he gets from his own intelligence agencies and brings it back to Steve Witkoff. Wow, I am shocked. Alexander's release was previously at the center of the unprecedented direct negotiations between Trump's hostage envoy Adam Baylor and leaders in Qatar in March. The Israeli government has also learned about those talks from its intelligence services who were spying on. At the time, Trump was seeking a deal. By the way, I don't believe that they were spying on Hamas. I believe they were spying on the American side. At the time, Trump was seeking a deal to free Alexander from his State of the Union address and was demanding the release of 250 prisoners held in Israel in exchange. Those talks hit a dead end 3 hours before Trump's speech. To this day, Trump's advisors believe Netanyahu's aides leaked it to the press in order to sabotage it. Witkoff floated a similar proposal 3 weeks later, under which would release Alexander, and Trump would publicly call for a temporary ceasefire and talks for a comprehensive deal. Refused. Over the next several weeks, Israel gradually expanded its ground incursions into Gaza, increased its airstrikes, and continued to block the entry of all humanitarian aid. On April 22nd, Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani visited the White House and met with Witkoff and Trump. He raised a proposal supported for a comprehensive deal to release all hostages and end the war. But the U.S. message was that a shorter-term partial deal was the only game in town. When he returned to Doha, Al Thani told and encouraged them to make a gesture to Trump that could shift his position, the official said. Days later, officials reached out to Baba. Remember when everyone would say, well, why doesn't release hostages as a good gesture? Well, there they have. And what did Israel do? They're pummeling Gaza again in an effort to deliberately ruin any kind of ceasefire negotiations that may take place between us and the United States of America. They are basically cutting out the middlemen and going directly to the United States of America because they recognize that Israel is the unreasonable party. And they're trying to show the United States of America that they are the ones who need to force Israel to come to the table because there's no other way that this deal will ever take place. What they are failing to recognize is that America does not give a shit. And I don't believe that America gives a shit. Why isn't release hostages a good faith is a sentence I heard today. Why was hospital? Why isn't Hamas release hostages a good faith? What do you mean? That's literally the number one thing that Israel's genocide supporters say. Is like, Hamas should release the hostages and Israel will stop. That's not true. Benjamin Netanyahu has said that is not the case. Also, Hamas has said, we will release all hostages since like October 17 in exchange for Israel not fucking invading the Gaza Strip initially or stopping the bombing of the Gaza Strip initially. October 17, 2023, by the way. I just don't think it's going to work. Most literal Asmongold viewer, I think he's just a Israel supporter. He might just be Israeli. Yeah. There's always another bunker under a hospital, dude. It's crazy. According to Palestinian resistance sources, the targeting of Sinwar's son is a bullshit excuse. I thought it was his brother. And he was not at the hospital and also is being used as an intelligence gathering mission to try to locate Mohammed Sinwar and Abu Ubaidah in order to bring about a victory in the eyes of the Israeli people. Do you think Hamas reaching out to the U.S. instead of Israel works to stroke Trump's ego? It reasserts that the U.S. is in control of Israel, not vice versa. You think Donald Trump, that understands that they hold all the cards in Ukraine, doesn't understand that he holds all the cards for Israel? Do you think Donald Trump is like a committed diehard Zionist or something like Biden was? No. he knows who controls everything in this process. Come on, guys. Is Hasan playing victim for his own actions again? I don't know what you mean by that. Do you mean like Customs and Border Patrol detaining me? Is that what you think? Is me playing victim to my own actions? You're right. I don't have a lot of faith in the Trump administration. I don't have a lot of faith in the Trump administration actually following through on any sort of firm commitment and pushing Israel to a ceasefire. The only motivating factors here is one, Donald Trump's distaste for how fucking annoying the Israeli envoys are and how entitled Israel is. Oh, this guy's a Swedish Nazi? I are Swedish. Well, I don't know if he's a Nazi. He might just be Swedish. Aggressive pivot to China, it's possible? No. First, it's a pivot to Iran, and then it's a pivot to China. The pivot to China is already happening. So, also, yeah, one of the New York Times witnesses for their investigation into Israel's killing of the 15 medics in Rafah was himself killed this weekend. Mohammed al-Bardawil, a young witness of the March 23rd attack on the medics in Gaza, was killed on Saturday when an Israeli gunboat fired on a Rafah beach. His father, Syed, asked our colleague, Bilal Abu Yazan, today for a photo of his son when he interviewed them together for our report. This kid, Israel killed him. Israel deliberately assassinated him. I think he was like 13. Anyway, in terms of motivating reasons for Donald Trump to potentially, reasons for Trump to potentially push for a ceasefire and directly deal with Hamas instead of Israel is one, he desperately needs a W. He came with this mandate that he was going to end all wars and all this shit, and he hasn't done so. And it seems like conflict is only escalating. Okay. Number two, sheer Israeli arrogance, the entitlement and the arrogance of the likes of Benjamin Netanyahu is very annoying for a narcissist like Donald Trump. Okay. That's another reason. Number three, $400 million jet from Qatar, a country that is at the very least neutral to the Palestinian cause. Okay. What was it? There was a fourth thing that I was going to say, but I can't remember now. But yeah, those three are the only reasons why he would dial this back. And I guess four is because he reads the room to a certain degree. But starving to death, dying of thirst, skeletons. No, there is no fucking care or consideration for the well-being of Palestinians in this equation. Don't be fucking ridiculous. Don't be ridiculous. At most, the only thing that he gives a fuck about, is how bad it looks. And yeah, he is. Oh, that's right. That was the other one. Trump is feeling powerless from Ukraine, so he wants to throw his weight around. Exactly. He can't control Russia. He can't pro-Islam, but owns a dog. Is that what you just asked me? Dude, I drink alcohol too. The fuck? What does pro-Islam mean? Do Israel supporters think that stripping the blame from him will make Trump like Israel more? Talk about delusional. No, they're hitting that because it's an angle to attack Trump, and it's a good way to get the Democrats on board too. Yet I'm here today not merely to condemn the past chaos of Iran's leaders, but to offer them a new path and a much better path towards a far better and more hopeful future. As I've shown repeatedly, I'm willing to end past conflicts and forge new partnerships for a better and more stable world, even if our differences may be very profound, which obviously they are in the case of Iran. I've never believed in having permanent enemies. I am different than a lot of people think. I don't like permanent enemies, but sometimes you need enemies to do the job, and you have to do it right. Enemies get you motivated. In fact, some of the closest friends of the United States of America are nations we fought wars against in generations past, and now they're our friends and our allies. I want to make a deal with Iran. If I can make a deal with Iran, I'll be very happy if we're going to make your region and the world a safer place. But if Iran's leadership rejects this olive branch and continues to attack their neighbors, then we will have no choice but to inflict massive maximum pressure, drive Iranian oil exports to zero like I did before. If you know that, they were a virtually bankrupt country because of what I did. They had no money for terror. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah. And take all action required to stop the regime from ever having a nuclear weapon. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. So are Democrats going to shit on Trump for sidestepping Israel? No. They can't. They can't directly yell at Trump for doing that. Even, I mean, there are some Democrats who have done that, but they're fucking insane. But most Democrats are not going to directly say that, which is why they'll just like angle the They'll angle their conversation around fucking. They will angle their conversation around like Qatar, or they'll defend John Fetterman. You know, the most valuable ally. Anyway, also here, mobile McDonald's in Riyadh. Girl to boycott is what I say to Saudi Arabia. Owning a dog is haram in Islam, guys. Yeah, I don't give a fuck, dude. What are you talking about? Hello? I don't fucking care, dude. I eat bacon too. What the fuck? When the fuck have I, what do you think I pray 5 times a day? Do you think I sneak out? Also, this was an insane title. Okay. Miss Rachel doubles down support for children in Gaza. Doubles down support for children in Gaza. It's sad that people try to make it controversial when you speak out for children that are facing immeasurable suffering, the YouTube educator said in a recent interview with Zeteo. That's a crazy thing to just write as an article title. Genuinely. Yeah, all my piss breaks are actually me facing Mecca. Yeah, Miss Rachel was Mehdi Hasan.
You clearly...
I also, by the way, I have to end early today at 7 hours, unfortunately, chatters, but there's a good reason for it. I'm going to be on CNN with Caitlin Collins in a little bit. That's right. So there's a good reason for it. And there's a bunch of other interviews lined up as well this week with other news broadcasters as well. Some of those are going to be live streamed. I'm not going to live stream the CNN one, but there are other interviews that will be live streamed. Liar, you just quiet quitting in a little bit. Also, a lot of chatters are saying it's not haram to have a dog. I don't know and I don't care. I don't think so. I don't think it is. It will be live on CNN.